Awesome. Well, thank you, Esteban. It's so cool getting to know you more. And do the person of ColorCon. Awesome. Okay. Awesome. It'll be fun. So this talk, getting along when you see someone being harassed or bullied, or when you're being harassed and bullied. The talk comes largely from the allies' point of view because it's really, really hard when you're in that situation to address it yourself. Although there are some things doing yourself make it a lot easier for other people to help you if it's still needed. We're going to talk about that towards the end. But this talk came out of kind of also a little bit about who I am. My mom is hard of hearing, so I got also federal government, amusingly enough. So I got a good tour of the federal government grievance process when I was a kid because my mom was left out of meetings because, well, she couldn't hear and she wasn't allowed to participate. So I was able to kind of get a firsthand look at what workplace harassment looks like when you go home. And it's horrible. It's horrible for your health. It's horrible for your family. It's not just someone was a jerk to you at work. It's when you go home, it continues to impact your life and it impacts your health. When she finally did have to retire from the federal government, my mom's health still hasn't come back. So it's just, I got a really good tour of how much it sucks, and I don't like it. And so I try and advocate for that not being something that happens. I've been in nonprofits pretty much my entire career. I started at a nonprofit that helped people with intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities live independently and also function in the community, which was incredible. I've been in this community since I was like, I don't know, shorter, not so short. So I was like 15 going to DC 2600, and there was some IRC before that. So I've had a chance to watch us grow up. I remember DEF CON 9 and DEF CON 19, all right? DEF CON 19 still kind of rowdy on the side I don't love, but DEF CON 9, horrible. So I can tell you we've grown up a lot, and I've just watched it and been part of it. I'm a Nova hacker. Are there any other Nova hackers in here? No? West Coast, okay. Incidentally, we're going to be doing a public speaking group at Pascal. We're still working out the dates and times, but if you want to practice your talks and would like to do it in an inclusive space, we're going to be spinning that up starting next year. And so I've done women's projects, TiaraCon, which was largely about women and also everyone else, creating space for people of all backgrounds and allies. And so ladieslunchcon was women's directed. I serve the 50 plus, which is super freaking cool. AARP, first thing people hear is, oh my God, I got my AARP card. But when you actually work for a company that advocates for seniors on a daily basis, where you know they're out suing people who aren't nice to seniors, when we're making policy and legislation, I love what I do, and that's what I get to do. But this is not a work talk. I'm not speaking for anyone. HR has not signed off on this. I am not. It's not a work talk. Technology Diversified is a brand new, shiny nonprofit that builds on the work we did with TiaraCon, which is diversity and inclusion focused, so bringing folks of diverse backgrounds together and including them. So working with folks with diverse backgrounds and working with allies. How do we come together to change the culture? Because in one moment, you may be the target of a bullying situation, and in the next moment, you may be able to help someone who's being bullied. We are all allies. We are all brought together. And you can be bullied if you're a guy or a gal. You can be bullied anytime. So how do we come together to change the overall culture and tone? So that stuff is just not acceptable. And that's kind of what I'm about. So it's important when you're talking about harassment and discrimination to know what harassment and discrimination are and why that is so impactful. Harassment is because you're a member in a protected class. So your gender, your religion, where you come from, these protected classes are partially federally mandated and partially state mandated. And so they are, because they are based on laws, there are time periods for investigation. So if you come to HR with an allegation of harassment, they need to start investigating it like the next day. They have a timeline, and they have to follow their process. But if you go to HR because you're being bullied, totally different scenario. You are not protected. Because bullying is not because of a protected class. Therefore, there is no legislation. There is a very small exception, and when I say small, I mean 4 states. All right, what I mean is Utah and California have a law against abusive workplace behavior, abusive conduct, that require intention. So you have to intend to be a jerk to someone. You have to intend to abuse someone. That can be hard to prove, right? The intention, because you can also say, oh, I was just clueless. So you have to document and show a pattern. There's a lot of burden of proof. One doesn't mention intention at all, Tennessee, so it's a lot looser. And then Nevada says bullying is illegal whether or not it is intended to cause or actually causes harm. Because bullying does cause harm. You go home and you throw up, or you get IBS, or these little stress-related sicknesses. It's not something that you see at work and then it doesn't come home with you. So if you have someone who's being bullied, it is really, really important to go and be a support to that person because they are not legally protected. The only protections they have are based on the policies at your place of employment around workplace bullying. And workplace violence does not cover workplace bullying. Totally different thing. Workplace violence is when I'm screaming at you, all right? But there's all of this really unacceptable behavior that starts with leaving people off mail chains, not bringing people to meetings, ignoring people's ideas. Still not okay, all the way up to humiliating people in email chains by calling them out for you're not happy with their work in front of their entire team, up to before you get to the screaming point. So there's a whole lot of room for things to go wrong for someone, and they are not protected. But if you go with them, if you log with them, if you support them, and you become part of that problem with them, then you're a protected class because you are covered under NLRA, National Labor Relations Act, as collective bargaining. So if it affects more than one worker, you've got protection. So be there for your friends and people who are affected. That was the whole point of that slide. Very important to know. So we were going to watch Mr. Robot. Who likes Mr. Robot? Okay, so we're going to have to kind of imagine it in our heads because the video is not going to play nicely with us today. But who's seen episode 1 of Mr. Robot? Okay, a lot of you. This is super cool. All right, so there's this girl, Angela, right? And she goes into this meeting with all of these other people. Angela's there with Elliot, the other main character. And when they go in that meeting, it's to discuss a breach. Something happened. And you have the MSSP people, so the security people. I'm not as much of a Mr. Robot fan, but I can discuss the social constructs. You've got the people from the contracting company, right? You've got the people who hired them, Evil Corp, definitely evil, guy's a jerk. And then you've got the feds, who say nothing. So say nothing, not my problem. So they go in and they're having this meeting about this post-breach activity, and Angela's boss says, let's have Angela, who is the account executive, give us the readout on the incident, because she's the one who knows it best. Well, she makes one error. Angela starts saying, hey, okay, well, this is what we're doing, and she makes a mistake on the time, which if you've handled an incident, you may have made a mistake when you were doing the readout too. It's not that hard. And the CEO promptly jumps on her neck, and he's like, we need someone technical, you're not on the ball. He's really, really hostile towards her. He was already getting worked up when she started to talk. He was already getting steamed up. And then he basically had her thrown out of the room. So he went to his direct, and his direct went to the head of the contracting company, and he grabbed Angela and he took her out. And there were some really interesting points in this scenario. One is Elliot, who is friends with Angela, apparently from childhood, again, I'm not a huge Mr. Robot fan, jumps in to try and help Angela. He's like, interrupting the boss, trying to berate her by answering her question for her. That actually didn't help her. When I watched the video, I watched it 3 or 4 times, I didn't catch it until the second or third viewing, that what Elliot was doing in trying to answer the question for Angela, that she was being berated when she was trying to answer, was actually supporting the bully. Because it was taking power from Angela, it was taking away her ability to be an agent, and she wasn't able to pick back up from them. And that was right around when she got shoved out of the room for not being technical and not being at the level, and we need a higher level of people in this room, which was pretty much how that went down. So there was some attempted support, but it was the wrong kind of support, and it didn't work. And there was an episode later where Angela raised this with Elliot, and Elliot was completely clueless. He didn't realize that what he'd done hadn't worked for her and wouldn't have worked for anyone, right? So this is one of those things where it's not that hard to do the wrong thing, meaning well, but there are ways of doing the right thing and meaning well. The last really important character scenario in there to mention were the bystanders. So when you go into a situation like that and you've got a boss being completely uncool, out of line, and you look at him and you go, yeah, that's not okay, or some other person who is in power, or just someone in a meeting, it is really hard to stand up to them and say, hey, no, uncool, in that moment, because there's a lot of pressure to please that person in that position of power. The minute Angela left the meeting, everyone kind of leaned in and got huddled, and it was totally we're here to be with you. And so there was a lot of pressure to not support her. And it really sucked for Angela, and she left, right? That can happen to each and every one of us, regardless of gender, race, disability, or ability. Any of us can be shut out of a meeting at any time. But it was particularly sucky for her, and it was particularly sucky, I think, for the bystanders. And I kind of want to dig in on that. One of the things I have found most sucky is when I have to watch someone else be treated badly, and there's nothing I can do about it. You know, what do? I don't know what to do. I don't want to get pulled up and hit in front of HR myself. I don't want to cause problems or make anyone else uncomfortable, but that person's definitely uncomfortable. And so some of the reasons for bystanders to be passive are they're afraid of their loss of privacy because HR investigations are not private. They can say that, but they do have to investigate, and that information is not private. They're afraid of bad consequences or the bully taking it out on them. They're afraid of getting too involved. They don't want to deal with this drama and bullshit at home or at work. They're afraid because they're introverts. But they may think that nothing's going to come of it, but you can absolutely stand up for other people and have it be effective. So you're there. What do you say? What do you do, right? Like, I just saw this. It's not okay. And it's totally okay to not do anything right then. If you're ever in that situation, it's totally okay. Yeah, I pulled out that slide. Was going to play a video at this point. So it's okay to not say anything right then. Go talk to them afterwards. Go and say, hey, I hear you. I notice. It wasn't just you. I'm going to log. Just so you know, I kept a note of what happened, who was there, and if you ever need to talk to me, you can. It can be very traumatizing to be targeted, and it can also be traumatizing to be a secondary trauma by being the witness, especially when you feel disempowered. So it's not that person's job to do your work for you. If you're traumatized, there's ways of getting help. Therapists are awesome. EAPs do not suck. But being there for that person is really, really important. Logging cannot be underestimated. If it did not get written down, it didn't happen. All right? If you did not write it down, it did not happen. So you can go to work and be bullied by your boss or someone else every day for 2 years, and if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So it's really important. Other things as an ally you can do, you can go, someone just makes horrible racist remark. What do you mean by that? Dark. Yeah, no, seriously, what did you mean when you said that house is on the wrong side of the tracks? You don't want to no. Oh, because you mean it's the black neighborhood, right? No. See, you have to challenge that stuff as you feel safe and comfortable. And you don't have to do it in that moment. If I were in a room where I had a CEO griping at my contracting company, I had the feds being completely useless, no comment, and, right? I wouldn't necessarily stand up there and be like, yo, CEO guy, you're horrible and you need to knock it off, because I would have walked out too and I probably wouldn't have a job the next day, right? But afterwards, go to that person or take the person who's being inappropriate aside. Being humiliated in front of a lot of people is going to get a negative reaction, right? And sometimes this stuff is just being clueless. Like Elliot in that particular shoot, in that particular moment, he didn't realize that talking for her was hurtful. But if you go and you have that side conversation, sometimes you can create real change, and the other person doesn't have to do it. The target doesn't have to. But you kind of got to judge your scenarios carefully. Like, I've got people who I will go to and be like, hi, so, you know, and some people I can do that, and some people you can't. But look into it. Think it through. Trust your gut. And then, all right, what else can I do? Because that still feels kind of like not a lot, right? I can go to HR with them. It's okay, because then you're a protected class if you're going together. If it's bullying, that's something you can do. It will possibly cause problems for you as well. 75% of HR involvement is new job. So you kind of got to think that through. Definitely don't push the target to do things they're not comfortable with because they may not want to change jobs. They may choose to take the abuse. It's not something you can decide for them. But what you can do is in every possible opportunity you get, say something good. So, hey, coworker, I want to recognize your greatness today in getting all of these policies together for us because I know it's not fun, and I really want to recognize the effort and the quality of your work, right? Doing that stuff in front of other people changes how they treat the target because then the messaging isn't all negative. It's not all, oh, this person's stupid. It's not all, this person doesn't contribute. It's this person's work is always wrong. No, now it's, let me point out this super positive thing about this person. Or point out this certain positive thing about the working style in your group so that you can change that. You can influence the entire team and spread on out by being a good example of how to talk to and talk with other people. Now I can actually go to a slide and not have a video. So micro-affirmations are genuine small acts of kindness. So that's what I was just talking about in terms of saying nice things. You do not have to limit it to someone you know who's being picked on. You can go, okay, what are the strategic initiatives I want to encourage? Like, I want to encourage MEMCOM or communications, a communications group, to do this certain kind of communication. So you give them lots of positive reinforcement, and suddenly they're doing what you want, right? You can use micro-affirmations and encouragement to change corporate culture and people's willingness to buy into your ideas. Because if they feel supported by you, they're much more likely to want to do things for you and help you build your initiatives. So I use that to basically, I pick an area where people aren't being nice to people and I say nice things. I'm like, yes, no, I want to talk to you about how this group, this outsourced contracting group, is super awesome. Let's talk about this victory they made today in phone management, because it's a huge victory. Let's talk about their achievements over the last 6 months. Doing that for groups that are marginalized, recognizing their greatness and their success can change the entire organization's concept of that group and improve the concept and the performance of that group. So you cannot say enough things about saying nice things about nice people, or even jerky people, because they can change. Bullying policy, you're not protected with that one, unless you're in those 4 states and then enjoy your lawsuit. Also, if you have to call someone, call a lawyer. I am not one. And again, set the tone. People follow you. You're an expert. You wouldn't be in this room if you weren't good at your job. And so what do you do if it occurs to you, right? That is the sucky slide. I have had to experience bullying and harassment. I have been there for people as they have experienced bullying and harassment. And I've seen, I know someone who's right now experiencing major health problems due to bullying and harassment, So it's horrible to be targeted. First thing is don't wait, because the longer you put up with the bullshit, the longer there is a case history of it not bothering you. So if they can say, hey, this has been going for 6 months and you're just now saying something about it, well, yeah, because you were afraid to go to HR. But it still undermines your case if you have to go to HR. So start logging early. Don't wait forever. It is a really good idea to validate. So log for a day or 2 or a week or 2. See if this is like a pattern, right? Get a feel for it. It is really important, if you can, to confront your bully and do it early. And the reason for that is, one is the period of time at which point, it's like, well, she didn't mind. Yeah, she did. And then the other thing is bullies just escalate. So they don't stop. They're not going to go away. Do not ever assume a bully is going to get tired of picking on you, because you're fun and you squirm. If a bully's coming after you, they're getting something out of it. They're getting power, they're getting control, and they're enjoying it. And so the best thing to do is to call them out on it early, because if they're a relatively mild bully, then they're likely to stop. And if they're not, you'll know what you're dealing with and you can take action. Finding friends is really important. Back to the bullying thing and having some ability to take care of yourself. But in general, if you're being bullied or harassed, you have a lot of trauma going on, and it's happening a lot. So having people who can tell you you're not crazy is super helpful. And yeah, definitely, if the bully doesn't stop or the harasser doesn't stop, or if it's a cultural thing in the office, talk to an attorney. It is never a bad use of money to call an attorney. I have never regretted spending money on an attorney. Okay, you can call LegalZoom. Unfortunately, Oregon doesn't do LegalZoom. There's another legal plan that covers Oregon. But if you have a legal plan, use it. Just call. Spend an hour on the phone with an attorney, and you're not going to have big problems. But if you don't have that conversation early, you won't know what your problems are or how big they are. And performance. One of the first things that goes to hell in a handbasket when you're being bullied is your performance. So especially if you've got a hidden disability or you have like ADHD, if you are having these experiences that undermine your performance, well, if you have to go to the point where you file with HR, you go to HR and you say this isn't cool, they look at your performance. And if your performance has already slipped into the toilet because you've had a bad day every day for the last 6 months to a year of your professional work, then they can say, oh, yeah, they're just doing this because they suck at their job. So it's like this nasty reinforcing cycle. And so the way to keep your power in your hands is to go early and to log. And so I'm going to leave you with a quote and then answer any questions I can answer, given that I'm not legally an attorney, just a very interested person. When everything around you seems to be lacking in integrity, when you see things around you that are not in line with what a person with integrity would do, you change the world from where you're standing. You get active bystander training, which is something that is offered with even more skills, because this is terrifying to speak up. And you just basically stand there and you say it's not okay, in whatever way, shape, or form you feel most comfortable.